And welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Delvecchio here. Did you know that almost 1 in 4 Canadians are caregivers? And almost all caregivers are unpaid, and they were most likely thrust into the role of caregiver with no formal training. Not easy. It could be stressful, exhausting, and certainly overwhelming. Well, to provide us with some words of advice, I have social worker Marla Overland in studio with me. Marla earned a Bachelor of Social Work from McGill with great distinction and is a long-standing member of the Quebec Order of Social Workers. With over 40 years of experience, she worked in youth protection and for over 30 of those years on a CLSC home care team supporting seniors and caregivers and guiding them through the complexities of the healthcare system. Marla is also the team lead, caregiver support and counseling for Lianas Senior Transition Support. Marla, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me in studio. Boy, oh boy, such a wealth of experience. So glad we're able to get you on the show here. And let's talk about the role of a caregiver because it can be extremely challenging. And what are some of those challenges faced by caregivers that you see?
Well, caregivers are having to cope with a myriad of emotions, and it's very overwhelming. But the most common reported feeling I get from caregivers is sheer exhaustion. And, difficulty to keep all the balls in the air, for example, having to cope with work, or if they're in a sandwich generation type of situation, they also have to deal with childcare at the same time. Also, the phenomenon, the fact that people are living longer, that would mean that the caregivers themselves are often dealing with their own health problems or that of a spouse. One of the major things that people report to me also is that they're having difficulty coming to terms with the loss of autonomy of the one they love.
Yeah, sometimes, we see a little bit of denial, sadness, guilt, and having difficulty coming to terms with their situation, which is probably evolving too.
Right. Fear, anger, all of that. A second challenge would be navigating the healthcare system and the frustrations that causes. And another one, Matt, is finding support because there's this fear almost of taxing the friend group or the family group, almost to be the Debbie Downer. You don't want to be getting together with your friends and talking about your issues. So the sad part of that is that caregivers often deal with their issues in silence to their detriment.
It's you talked about the support, and you bring up such a good point because there's a little bit of guilt there, embarrassment maybe, don't want to bog people down with your problems, and you're playing that superhero role, But support and counseling can be an effective tool to assist caregivers. This is what you do. So why is it important for caregivers to have a dedicated space, judgment-free, to talk about their experiences and challenges?
Well, as you just said, caregiver support and counseling with a professional offers a non-judgmental space to express feelings, all of the feelings that we talked about earlier, just before, and to deal with anxiety and exhaustion and frustration. And this is so the caregiver doesn't carry the weight of this alone or in silence. Talking openly with a professional ensures that the caregiver feels, first of all, seen, validated, and most of all supported. And it's something you don't get when you're constantly focusing on the needs of someone else.
Right. You're just in survival mode at times. And like you mentioned with the sandwich generation, worried about your own kids as well. And it doesn't end.
Therefore, the space is just about them. And it's a difference, right?
Yeah. Listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Delvecchio here, and I'm talking with social worker Marla Overland about the challenges of caregivers, and we're going to be talking about a couple of resources as well. Now, you do these counseling, you're advising people as well. So, what kind of tools or strategies do caregivers actually learn during some of these sessions?
Well, as you said, caregiving is not only a place, caregiving counseling rather, is not only a place of dealing with pent-up feelings, but also it's a place to equip people with tools and to maintain a certain balance. So realistic goal setting would be one, helping the person to pace themselves so that they're not overwhelmed. Ensuring time for respite would be another, without guilt. Permission to do so, almost as a prescription for survival. I also help caregivers to learn mindfulness practices. And this is important to ground oneself. My mantra that I tell them all the time, there is peace in this moment. Learning how to breathe, not worrying about what's going to happen next, which may never come to pass anyhow, and dealing with the here and now. You mentioned connecting to community resources, and that's important, and I actually direct them to a number of them. And finally, another tool I'd like to talk about is journaling. That's something that allows the caregiver to process feelings in the here and now in a targeted way. And it allows the caregiver to bring that information into counseling sessions in future with me so we can explore those feelings.
You know, you talked about burnout. I want to address that, Marla, for a second here, because there's different types of burnout, but at the end of the day, caregivers, many of them might not even realize how deep they're into it. But burnout is very real. We hear a lot about it. So what can we do to prevent burnout?
Well, I help caregivers to understand the difference between compassion fatigue, which is natural and manageable, and burnout, which can be harmful if unaddressed. So with regular check-ins with a professional, we can intervene to prevent a burnout before it comes to pass. So there's certain signs of burnout that I kind of caution them to look out for, and I monitor with them. Examples would be, are you not sleeping well? Are you eating way too much or too little? Are you emotionally exhausted to the point where you can't proceed with your day-to-day? Are you feeling overwhelmed to the point of feeling trapped? Are you not focusing on hobbies that you used to enjoy and neglecting those? Are you feeling resentful towards the senior that you're dealing with? Do you fantasize about escaping? Do you feel that you're unappreciated? Do you have a difficulty working? Are you resting but feel exhausted anyway?
See that a lot.
Yeah, these are examples.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Delvecchio here, and I'm with the social worker Marla Overland. Really some great things to look out for. Caregivers that are listening, I'm sure can relate to what you're talking about here. And sometimes there are caregivers that aren't into it as much, but maybe listening as well, saying, you know what, here's some good advice. So I'd like to ask you, this is a big thing that you see. If a caregiver is struggling but hesitant to reach out to get some help, what would you say to them?
I remind people that you can't pour from an empty cup. That means seeking support is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of strength and love, not only for the client, but for the caregiver. And counseling helps caregivers to reclaim that sense of well-being. It's not selfish. It's essential so that afterwards they can go back and care for their loved one from a place of strength and not depletion.
It's so true, and good for you. Obviously, one approach is getting some counseling with someone like yourself. You mentioned there's community resources out there, and there are many. Sometimes you just have to seek them out. I'm on the board of Nova West Island. There's a wonderful organization. There's Alzheimer's Society of Montreal and AGI, Alzheimer's Grouping, and it goes on and on and on. So seek out those resources. Yes, we do see you're trying to do everything on your own, but know that there has to be a certain point where, okay, I need to start seeking out some help. And to all the caregivers listening, and to, more importantly, friends, family of caregivers, give them a nudge. It's okay. It's okay if you need to seek out some help. All right. One of the things you talked about, Marla, was at the beginning was how to navigate our healthcare system. And you and I both see some challenges these days, especially with the budget cuts, Santé Quebec, human resources, hard to hire people, how to navigate CLSC, how do I get and access CLSC services. You have spent how many years in the CLSC? In your
33.
She says quietly, 33 years. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to stick around because that's our next segment is going to be how to access public healthcare services like the CLSC.